Happy Wine Wednesday, everyone. I hope you're having a fabulous week. I personally am sipping on a noir tonight. Let me know in the comment section what you're sipping on. We are here with another episode of Wine Wednesday, where we chat about seahorses, reef tanks, coral, macros, and anything in between. So it is open. We don't have a topic or a guest tonight. So anything you want to talk about, let us know in the comment section. I've got Holly and Cheryl with me so far. Ray hasn't joined. Dan hasn't joined. Who knows if they will soon? I don't. I've had one heck of a week myself, so I'm sipping on the wine. How are you guys doing? Let me know in the comment section. And Cheryl, how's your week been?
Busy.
Yeah?
But it always is. I can find 50 gazillion things that I need to do all the time.
Right. No, I hear you.
Yeah, keeping seahorses definitely keeps you busy, especially when you're trying to do other projects.
Sure.
But as hot as it's been here, I finally gave up trying to work outside. So I'm doing everything inside these days. It's just too darn hot out there.
Well, speaking of the heat, we were talking before we went live about where's it going on, Cheryl? You said is it in Florida? Where's the heat wave going on? What's going on? Tell us.
The waters around Florida are hitting over 100 degrees right now. And in parts of the Gulf around Florida. And that is a potential catastrophe. It already is for the corals. They're already seeing massive amounts of coral bleaching in that area, in those areas. But it's also going to dramatically impact the seahorses and their survival long term.
See, this is a conversation I really like. Now I'm going to have to, black myself out for a second and call Dan, because he always talks about how they freak out every time something happens and they're so afraid it's going to affect the seahorses. And the seahorses are smart enough and know enough to relocate and then come back. But how long can that happen? We
don't know. It's like when we had the BP spill, and literally all the dwarf seahorses pretty much disappeared from the Louisiana, the Gulf Coast area. But what they found is they had moved ahead of and established populations farther south along Florida. And because at one point they were trying to make them an endangered species. Well, they found out that there was a bunch of them. They just actually moved to a new territory.
Yeah.
So it's conceivable that with that extreme heat around Florida, they may be moving farther to the east.
I've always wondered if that's how new species develop, adapt. I know adaptation takes a lot longer than, 20 years or whatnot, just because they moved from an area. But think about it, over time, if they're smart enough, if they have some sort of sensing, some way of sensing what's going on, and they can tell that something's coming, or the heat, the water's heating up or whatnot, and they move and then they adapt to their new area. I just wonder how that changes them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, it's also changing their habitat too, like Zen Ginger's pointing out, because the reef's going to change. And so everyone's habitat, everybody that lives there, their habitat's going to be changed too.
Sure.
Well, it's one of those things that they've been obviously changing and are still changing for a very long time. They're a primitive species, and it doesn't surprise me. It's like when I get tornado warnings in my house.
Yeah,
all my seahorses cluster together in the same corner of the tank.
See,
it's always the same corner, and it's obvious. So when I get a tornado warning, I go look at the seahorses.
If
they're not all clumped together, I have nothing to worry about.
But so if it's close enough to go take cover.
The thing is, I suspect they're sensing the changes in the barometric pressure when they're doing that. And that they have a lot of survival skills that they've evolved in so many different directions for so long.
It's interesting though, because we all act like they're not that smart, and we've had this discussion with Ray on numerous occasions about how smart or not seahorses are. But the thing is, they might be smart in a different sense, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe they don't contemplate stuff and think things through the way that
They
we
don't
do.
have to. Yeah.
But oh my gosh, here's Ray. But
Okay.
they might sense things. And I mean, like, I wish I could tell that a tornado is coming. And I don't mean by, you know, my knees aching or whatever. I mean, it'd be
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
cool if you could just sense. We were just talking about you.
Yeah.
Well, I just heard you talking about tornado, and we just went through tornado warnings for London. It's never had a tornado in London.
Really?
Oh, wow.
Basically, I'm late because we had a blast of thunder that I've never experienced in my life. A
Wow.
car hit the house. That's
What?
how much it shook the house. And my dog has so many problems, and then with this, just scared the
Oh,
bejesus out of her. And
poor thing.
I think she's calmed down now, but it's no,
So
just
wait, you've
everything.
never had tornadoes there?
No, we had one that many decades ago was about 50 kilometers away.
Wow.
But that's only about like 30 miles in terms of your measurements. But to actually hit London, we've never had one.
That's so interesting. What do you think's the cause?
Global warming.
Yeah. Well, that's what we were just talking about is the warmer waters around Florida. And we were having a discussion though, is it destroying or are the seahorses becoming extinct due to it, or are they moving and adapting to new areas?
I think
What do you
it's
think?
going to depend on how fast the change is.
Mm,
If
good
it's
point.
a relatively gradual change, they'll adapt to it and stay in their areas that they are. But if it does get too drastic a change, then there'll be a lot of mortalities, and there's a chance that some of them may be able to find cooler areas. But unless a storm comes up to help them move to some area like that, I can't see with their limited mobility that they're going to find it on their own.
You know what though? It's funny because I remember when I had a discussion in a Facebook group with a couple of my friends, colleagues, whatever you want to call them, Felicia McCauley, Paul, a bunch of different people that were in different areas of the industry and hobby. And we were kind of explaining why the theory that seahorses need low flow is wrong now. And we've kind of, figured it out in our tanks. They actually like more flow, and more flow helps keep the tank cleaner and etc. But one of my friends posted a meme of a seahorse kicking it across the sand bed, nothing to help him. And I mean, he is kicking it across the sand bed in the ocean. And I mean, going like you're like, oh my God, is that a seahorse flying by? And he is zooming in the tidal wave or something. And I mean, they can get when they want to get. Cheryl, you saw
Dandy
that?
does that. Dandy, even
Well,
though he's
it's like-
handicapped, when he wants to go, he will shoot across the
Yeah.
tank.
Yeah,
Well, shooting across
it's like the
different
hippocampus
across
engines.
a large
I
body
believe
of
that.
water.
Right,
I believe
and I
too.
understand that, but that's what I'm saying is I really am of the theory, can't prove it, don't have the scientific background, but I really am of the theory that some of the millions of species that we come up with seahorses are truly because over time, lots and lots of years, not 10, but they have moved, not as fast as I'm talking about speeding torpedo, but they move to a different area and they adapt and their features adapt with them. But anyway, Cheryl, what were you going to say?
Well, I was going to say, a few years back, there was a man that was studying hippocampus engines. I think it was in San Diego Harbor, but it was right in that general area. Anyway, they had massive rain, which basically turned their habitat into more of a freshwater environment. and all the engines disappeared. And once things restabilized again, several months later, they were back in their usual spots after that. So they don't always necessarily go
They
away
come
for
back.
long periods.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I didn't mean to cut you off. I was agreeing with you.
Yeah.
That is the case
No, you're
too,
fine.
that they can avoid the situation and come back for sure. And that's,
Well,
and there's something to be said though too, that, you know, I'm both sides of the coin here. If the habitat's destroyed, are they going to come back to it? Right. So destroying habitats are a really bad thing too. So,
well,
yeah,
you'd expect them at this point to move farther north, where it's going to be cooler. And that wouldn't surprise me if the northern erectus become crossbreeding regularly with the southern erectus if they move north. And that
I
could
think
be very
we already
well
do.
what will happen. Just like the erectus will interbreed with reedi.
Right.
That's something that has evolved over time too, and it's what the people that study these organisms call it speciation, where they start interbreeding or changing where they're living, and they adapt. And
It's just interesting to me as a hobbyist because we are so against mixing species, right? Because they're from different areas, they carry different pathogens, they have different immunities. We've talked about this endlessly. But then when they do it in the wild themselves, somehow it works out, and all of a sudden we can do it in our tanks too. It's pretty interesting. I mean, I'm just flabbergasted, I guess.
well, and
You know?
Jorge, a couple of years ago, put a scientific paper, and the discussion was what happens when to seahorse populations if there's suddenly an earthquake and it blocks off their normal travel routes. Well, they basically evolve to the new conditions over time, and they may not look anything like they did before the collapse and filling of the waterway. So, and it's part of their survival.
Yeah.
It's essential to their survival.
They're masters of camouflage, and that might mean actually changing for real. I get you. Gina's Reef, I don't know what you mean by the cocaine sharks in Florida. I didn't hear that story. I don't know.
Yeah, I haven't either. But I imagine it affects them. They probably eat the dumped cocaine that happens there sometimes. I didn't know that was a thing. I never heard of it, but
you're gonna have to tell us some more, Gina.
Yeah, have to tell us the story.
And
is it like Cocaine Bear?
Oh, okie dokie. Zen Ginger said, I would personally like to know about the pro and con differences in a 125 with a 60-gallon sump or a 75-gallon with a secondary 75 as a sump. She keeps going back and forth. What do you guys think? So a 125, a huger tank with a 60-gallon sump, or a 75 on top of a 75? I have some thoughts.
The larger tank's going to make it a lot harder to keep track of them and make sure they're eating and to visualize what they're doing versus a smaller tank. I actually, at one point, had a 90-gallon, and I finally decided it was too big of a pain to keep track of everybody in.
So if you're only keeping a few seahorses, maybe the bigger display tank is not the way to go, is what you're saying.
Exactly.
I think good point. I think it depends on how many you want to keep and what other stuff. I think you decide on what you're going to keep first and then get a tank to suit it, to suit what you want. I know I have a 75-gallon is my largest tank. And to me, it's actually pretty big. It's low, so I would say 1.5 feet is the size of the table that it's on. So it's below waist height. So I can reach in to clean it. But knowing how big it is, I could imagine if it was up higher, I would have a hard time cleaning it. Harder than I do.
That's what they make stools for.
That's what they make
stools. I had a 90-gallon for the abs.
So you had a 90-gallon, but in your experience keeping seahorses, if you weren't trying to breed and you just wanted a seahorse tank, but you wanted to keep them well and healthy for as long as you could keep them, would you go with a bigger display tank or a bigger sump or an equal? What would your
I don't
ideal
know.
dimensions be?
I don't know a true seahorse keeper that would keep a bigger tank and not stock it to its limit.
What do you mean? Like if somebody tried that, they'd put too many seahorses in?
Yeah, if you've got a 125, then stock it for 125. If you got a 75,
Yeah.
stock it for 75.
Gotcha.
That's what I say.
So it's a personal choice. You decide what you want, and nobody can make that decision for you. It's up to your financial capabilities and your own capabilities of looking after the tank. As I say, I don't think a tall tank is a big problem. There's always ways around it. You can get on a stool
Sure.
to be able to reach in further. They've got
yeah, but wait a minute. For someone like me, and I am wearing my
Not me.
I am wearing my, I don't know if I could point this down. I am wearing one of my Seahorse Whisperer shirts. Who's your mama? Okay. These are actually already available, but I'm trying to make them more feasible to buy. So, but you can buy them now if you just really want one. But anyways, now I lost what I was saying. What was I saying? Oh, if you have my body type, my waist is right here, Ray. So even if I get up on a stool to try to reach in and reach the bottom of a tank, ain't gonna work. If it's tall, my arm won't go over the tank into the bottom, right? So
I'm tall, but I'm not good on a ladder, and I get in there and scrub. I'm clumsy, so if I have to climb to get to the bottom of a tank, it ain't happening.
But I mean, even if you climb, though, do you guys get what I'm saying? Like I'm making a fool of myself doing this, but I'm saying if you reach in, if your armpit hits the tank and your arm's not long enough to reach the bottom, you're hit.
Then hold something in your hand.
Yeah, no.
That's coming down to what I said. It's a personal choice. You have to decide if you want to do what you need to accommodate the bigger tank and its needs. And if you're not, then you go with the tank that is suitable for.
Well, and I really like what you said too, Ray, about it depends, and Holly, all of you said it. You know, it depends on what you want, right? So Zen, I think we've talked before, but I know you go back and forth on what you want to do, which is fine. But if you're trying to do like I don't want to say a harem or, I mean, if you're trying to do like this, I've seen 300-gallon seahorse tanks that are amazing and seahorses everywhere. I've seen Vincent's smaller tanks with seahorses everywhere, and that's cool too. But with you starting out, if you're just looking, I mean, if you're just going to do a couple pair and some, some little, kind of like Holly's tank with some little cleanup crew with maybe Goby with this, that, and the other, a huge ass 125 is going to be kind of boring for a minute. Once the seahorses get bigger, and they will, then it's more exciting. But, if you're not going to stock it more, then maybe go smaller for the display, so the display is more active, like they were saying. Like you see, you look at the tank and you see trying to figure out where are they, what are they doing, right? But I like the idea too that you're also considering, no matter the size of the display tank, you want to make sure the sump compensates, because that's really important too. So.
Yeah, the first question you really need to answer, and that was a mistake I made very early on with my 90-gallon, is I could not reach the back of the tank without getting on a ladder and bending at the waist with my face almost in the tank to get to the back areas.
Yep.
And that's something that's one of the reasons I got rid of the 90, is I could not truly take care of it the way I wanted to.
But Ray's right too. I did a Ray move, you guys. I did a video about it once, very, very many years ago. But in my 90-gallon SCA, it's this beautiful tank. It's a cube. It's not running right now, or I'd go show you guys. But there are videos up about it, and it had all of my adolescents in it. I had a good 30 seahorses in that tank at one point. They were adolescents. And it was beautiful. And I had to make something. And I literally used one of those vacuum hoses, just the cheap ones that you have to create the suction and it goes down the airline into the tube, right? But I used one of those and I literally zip tied on a scraper. And what I would do is I would scrape the tank, I would get the suction going and I would use the scraper to scrape the stuff off the bottom because I couldn't reach it. And sides, vacuum would pull it right up. Yep. So, I mean, you can figure it out, but
yeah, I mean,
it was work.
I've got a DSA 65, and the thing is, it's 36 by 20, 36 by 20 by 20. And I have a heck of a time reaching the back just to even move something around because it's much deeper. And I'm just not that big.
Gotcha. I'm sorry. I was listening, but I'm trying to also keep up with the comments. Sorry. I think I missed quite a few. Sorry, guys. Personally like to know this, that, and the other. And then for the new Seahorse tank, but the sump might be where I keep a few other coral. What do you guys think about keeping coral in the sump? I know that's not actually the question, but now that I've said it wrong, I'm curious.
It depends on what kind of lighting it's going to take. It's depending on how creative you can be, and it's going to depend on how big your sump is. Depending on the type of coral, some of them like a lot of flow, some of them don't like a lot of flow. It just depends on what you're wanting to do. I personally don't keep anything in my sumps except different types of filter media, just because I don't like getting down on my hands and knees and having to rearrange stuff and remove stuff. And
Cheryl, you hit on a good point though, that was right along with Ray's point, that it depends on whether or not you can create a sump that will give the conditions needed for coral. Like you mentioned lighting, Cheryl. And the thing is temperature right there. That's the real problem. So any macros or coral that I would keep in a Seahorse tank, it doesn't really matter if I keep them in the sump or in the display, because they have to be accepting of the temperature choices of that I keep for the seahorses. They have to be able to stay under 74 degrees. And there's quite a few coral that can't do that. There's even macro that can't do that. So that's my big thing, temp.
A friend of mine calls this the easiest one to propagate for plants. He calls them Cheetos.
Cheetos, yeah.
So I know a lot of people that have Cheetos in their tanks.
Yeah, that's funny.
Sure, and I'm sorry I'm jumping around, but I think I'm trying to get through the comments. And Gina said, or Zen Ginger said, oh no, decoration purposes, but definitely Seahorse friendly. Anyways, I'm sorry, but yeah, no, I would just say it just depends on because I've seen tanks, seriously, in one of my videos that I did many years ago with, Walid. Walid had a tank. It wasn't even seahorses, but he had this beautiful reef tank, but the sump was macros and it was more beautiful than the tank. So it just depends on what you're trying to do and all that good stuff. But you have to definitely consider the lighting needed for the coral or macro, the temperature needed for the coral or macro. The reason that I've kept only gorgonians and macros in my seahorse tanks is because it's just easier. Is there not a way you could probably do it? And going back to Gina's question, if you want to keep coral and other things that need higher temperatures, you're going to be more successful with seahorses tank with more water volume, more filtration, and etc., than you are in a smaller tank keeping the temperature where you need it to be. So it just depends on what you want to do. I know Dan said that before. He had a client that had a 300-gallon tank, I think, with a 300-gallon sump, and it had coral and everything and seahorses, and they kept it at like 86 degrees or something, but it was huge and the filtration was massive. So it just depends on what you're willing to do. And, he was using probiotics and feeds and, so
Yeah,
for
with
a
that size,
newcomers, keep it simple.
those temperatures, I would expect that seahorses would need some extensive long-term acclimation to be able to do well in the 80s.
Yeah.
Again, it's going to depend on the species, but that's getting awful warm because of what you're dealing with is you're dealing with the potential for bacterial problems.
Sure. Anything they brought with them is multiplying rapidly, and it's gonna cause problems. Agreed.
Yep.
Absolutely. We're back to talk about cocaine sharks. Oh no.
Yeah.
Did anybody invite the birthday boy to come
Who's
on?
birthday boy?
Chris.
I'm not
Chris.
there yet. Chris, get in here. Let us sing you happy birthday. Actually, your present is we won't sing because you don't want me to sing. But
he was visiting family this weekend.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I'm not even there yet. I'm back to Vincent said a 125 if you're planning on keeping a bunch. Agree with that. If you want tons.
How
Zen
many?
Ginger said 4 erectus. I think it's my goal. Maybe a mandarin. Purple gorgonians. Yeah, I'm saying a 75.
Yeah,
if that's
for sure.
what you want, 75, not 125.
I'll tell you, I have 5 in a 75, and it's huge for them.
Right.
Yeah.
And it won't be for, like long term, like Holly says it's huge for them, but she can look at the tank and see them swimming around. Like at first when you get them and they're like this, you're like, what the heck? And in a 125, it'd be worse. And we're always advocates, for more water volume gives you more room for error, right? But you're not somebody that's saying, should I have a 125 or a 75? You're saying, should I have a 125 with this sump or a 75 with this sump or 6, whatever you said. But I'm saying if you have an adequate sump with the filtration, then you can do a smaller display tank and create what you want and still have an active tank that you'll be happy with, is my thoughts.
Yeah.
Unless they're large adult seahorses, in a 125, it would be tough to keep track of them.
Yeah, mine, I think now they're a good 7 inches or so, and they're 5 of them, and they've got plenty of room to go exploring. They're kind of little in there, it seems, right now. So I think the 75 will be plenty if you only do 4. But you got to think also about, like you were saying, what other fish and other organisms do you want to have in the tank besides the seahorses? So you got to keep the whole picture in mind.
Absolutely. And a Facebook user actually said, extra lights, wave makers, go big display and coral it up. And you could. I'm not at all saying you can't. You just have to be willing to risk the coral and the seahorses, right? And if you do a bigger tank, you're more likely to succeed. I'm not saying you can't. But if you're worried about temperature differences and you're worried about, I think people say coral and I instantly think SPS because I love SPS. My mixed reef tank was full of SPS. I wouldn't put SPS in a seahorse tank. Not just because I'm worried about the seahorses or the SPS. I'm worried about the seahorses hitching on the SPS and killing the coral, right? It's not just about the coral needing stuff that kills the seahorses. It's a mutual destruction kind of in my mind.
I like that.
Yeah. So I'm not saying you can't do it, though. You can, and especially if you get seahorses that just tend to have territories that they like and don't go around different areas. But I would make sure you don't get anything that could hurt the seahorse, and you got to consider the temperature, as we talked about earlier. And Cheryl was saying, the second you start raising that temperature for the coral, even though you have a massive amount of water volume and the massive amount of filtration, it doesn't matter because it's the pathogens, bacteria, stuff that they brought with them internally that are gonna start acting up as the temperature.
I think the good plan is to kind of go window shopping and see, which tank mates, plan for the seahorses and then see which things, because I'm no expert on coral. I can't tell you, but there's sites out there that will match, the things that you want to the seahorses, and then kind of make a plan of how many of this, how much of that. And then that'll help you decide on what size of system you actually need once you figure out what you really want to do.
And nobody gets it right on the first try.
And
my
you might
first
change
tank,
your mind like I did.
my first tank, you guys all know, my first Seahorse tank was a 29-gallon with no sump. I put 4 seahorses in there. I stuffed it full of macro, and that's the macro is probably the only
They saved
reason
their butt.
saved them. But even that, I ended up constantly fighting cyano, and it was just a constant fight. And I did lose one male to pouch emphysema, and I did see him scrape his pouch, and so that probably started and caused it. But it doesn't matter. The fact is, because I wasn't tracking the temperature like I should, because there was probably so many organics in that small space with all that stuff, they started having problems. I added a sump, and then I finally ended up moving them. I had to get a bigger tank. So you'd be smarter to just start out bigger, but I don't know that you have to go 125. I think a 75 is adequate as long as you have a sump with the correct filtration. Ray, were you trying to say something?
The other thing is, depending on what type of corals you have, some of them require a high flow that seahorses would not do well with. And you have to take that into consideration, is how much flow are you going to need to pull this off?
Yeah. Okay, and I'm sorry. Sorry, guys, I'm trying to read into, I can't do 2 things at once. But Zen Ginger said, I figured it would be like 2/3 sump and 1/3 refugium. So I'd be okay. I'd even be okay with macros, but they need even more special lighting, don't they? I disagree. What are you guys' thoughts on that?
I've never
Because it depends what macro she chooses.
That's true. That's true. In my personal experience, actually, they're absolutely right. It depends on what macros you're talking about. If you're talking about an algae scrubber where you're trying to grow nuisance algae in a method of filtration, then you need the reds and the highlighting, and you need a special light on the sump in order to grow this nuisance algae as a competitor to the display tank, right? I have a whole video on that talking about that. And I've done it in my tanks, even when I had display macros in the display tank. Or not, I've done it both ways. But if you're using it as filtration, absolutely, you're going to need special light. You're going to, whatever. And then I would do it in the sump. But for when I say display macros, I mean the pretty ones. I pronounce it badly. Hyphnia, the red grape, the dragon's breath. All those are beautiful macros that I've kept in tanks with literally no lighting. They don't do as well. I'm not trying to pretend like you can pull that off forever, especially in a deep tank. But in a shallow tank, if you have just a base lighting over it, I've done macros with a T5, just like one of those little shop lights with one T5, and it worked. But it was a shallower tank. My biggest macro tank, I used a freshwater plant light, but the freshwater plant light didn't have all the. It was LED. It didn't heat up the tank. I mean, there's just all these considerations. I know I'm off rambling. Sorry, guys. I'm off on a topic. I'm thinking macros.
It's like Calipra proliferum maxifolia, you can pretty much grow it in anything.
Yep.
And it'll take over. Versus like some of the photosynthetic gorgs and some of that kind of stuff can be a lot trickier. So it depends on what you're looking at. Some species of macroalgae can be difficult to. You may need special treatment. It just depends on what you're putting in the tank.
Absolutely. But I would say you can always get away with photosynthetic gorgs in the basic macros in your tank if you have any kind of lighting. I mean, you can make them grow faster, better. You can make the tank healthier with specific lighting, but I've never had a problem with those things as long as you have some sort of reef lighting or freshwater lighting. Cheryl, were you going to finish up? Were you going to say something?
No, I was just thinking I have some the little wands. Who is it that makes them? They have a blue light and a white light. That's what I use on my nurseries and on some of my other tanks. And then I have some reef breeder photons for tanks that I want more more lighting in. But again, those are highly adjustable. So there's a big difference between the two.
Well, and you hit on a point too, because the whole question was, couldn't macros and such things need more special lighting than coral? And when I say coral, again, I'm thinking SPS and stuff like that. But the thing is that's not right, because SPS literally will die. They'll bleach without lighting. Whereas macros and such, they can, but they'll likely just not grow as fast. So there's just
there's several species of saltwater macros that'll grow just about anywhere.
Right. And the coral also needs the temperature, right? They need the higher temperature that you can have photosynthetic gorgonians and macros, and I've kept them in really ridiculously low temperatures and they're fine. They might not grow really fast if you're doing it that way, but they don't, they're still thriving. They're still eating. I've got pictures of gorgs grabbing stuff. Yeah. So anyways, and you've considered doing a reef tank after. Don't think in the Seahorse tank, but being the reef tank is a great plan for me. No, absolutely. That's my whole point. Is do a reef tank and then do a Seahorse tank. Absolutely, right there with you. That is the answer.
I use reef tanks on some of my bigger Seahorse tanks, but then I'm not doing a lot with corals and stuff like that. It's strictly seahorses. And they're kind of funny because the seahorses get used to lighting programs. And if you're late turning something on or off, you're going to hear about it. You're going to know that they're not happy with you.
They know their schedule, that's for sure. I came home today. I came home late, and today was tank cleaning day. And I put in a new hitch for Sadie in the same place where her hitch usually is, but I just swapped out something for another one. And I had not put the feeding station in yet, though. It magnetizes to the tank, and I hadn't added that yet. But I come home, and there she is sitting on the new hitch in the place where the feeding station goes, just waiting for it to show up. She's like, Mom, I'm ready. Where's dinner?
She knew.
Time.
So smart. Hey, and I would say too, Gina's Reef said, don't forget magnesium and iron supplements for your macros, for some macros. I'm glad you said some, because totally agree. In the article in the Reef Hobbyist magazine, I talked about how you can get your macros really healthy and growing and loving life and, making a beautiful tank. But again, I've kept them not using anything. So again, it depends on what you want. Absolutely agree with you, Gina's Reef. If you want to keep those happy, care about your magnesium and iron. But I'm telling you, you can do it without it. Anyways, all right.
A lot of the macros, if you get stuff that's happy in one of those in a tank, they'll take over the whole darn tank if you're careful.
Right. And I mean, you're talking about, you got the best fertilizer in the world. You got seahorse poop. I mean, that's it. We make a joke about that all the time. But anyways,
seahorses are messy, but the live macro helps clean the tank because they're going to use some of that leftover nutrient.
Yeah. And Zen Ginger said the lights I use on my planet tank are actually repurposed reef lights that have both spectrum options. So yeah, you'd be good. Absolutely. Hey, I want some gorgeous sponge. I need some, Gina. Right here. I need some. Anyways, I feel like I missed something though, because you guys were talking about something and I couldn't find the question. What were you guys talking about earlier? That I was like, wait, what? No, everybody's giving me blank stare. All right,
Not
I
the
guess I don't have
cocaine
them.
sharks.
Not the cocaine sharks. No, I'm trying to pretend I didn't see that. I'm pretending I'm not hearing that. But no, I can't remember what it was. I don't know. I guess I give up. But anyways, Ray, any of this?
Nope. And don't ask me to remember with my cognitive impairment.
Hey, I have a friend that has a 500-gallon reef tank.
Mm-hmm.
You want to go? He's the if you're going to go do it, you go big. But he's been at this for years. And we had a barbecue at his house, and I tried to talk him into putting the tank outside as a dipping tub for everybody
Oh,
to cool
Lord.
off. Needless to say, that didn't go over.
I mean, I would love to have a like. I mean, come on, guys. If I hit the lottery, you better believe
Right.
my house is gonna have one of like the freaking 20,000-gallon Seahorse tank in the wall. Of course, all that stuff. But every time I start missing all the extravagances or the extras of like the reef tank and the macros and all that stuff. Every time I'm like, you guys start talking and I'm like, oh my God, I got to get some more gorgonians. I've got to get some more macros. My tank is so boring. I started it to prove you could keep them in a smaller tank. And I started it because I wanted babies, right? And I've got only these 2 tanks left. And this one's boring because I never really cleaned it up. And this one's boring because it's small and I hoped for breeders. I want to spruce them up. But then every week when I start thinking about actually buying stuff to spruce it up, then I realize, oh shit, I really don't want to mess with this tank tonight. And you know what? I don't have to, because it's not a desperate thing, because I've got the filtration intact. There's not that, it's not overpacked. It doesn't have a ton of shit in there. I can just let it go a day and worry about it tomorrow. Whereas when I had all those macros in the 29-gallon with 4 seahorses, there wasn't a freaking day that I did not have to maintenance that tank. Period.
Mhm.
Every day I was in there without fail.
My favorite was one of the first macros I ever got was a Calupra. Of course, I didn't know anything about it, and I started wondering, why is some of the top parts turning white? I get up one morning, my whole tank is a cloud. It had gone sexual.
Oh.
It was reproducing, and it clouded it up the whole tank. But I found that out the hard way.
Yeah.
Ray just messaged me and said he just said he thinks my kids will grow up and have babies before my seahorses do. Ray, that is mean. What the hell?
Sometimes it hurts, doesn't it?
Well, and the truth is that you're absolutely right. That if I really wanted babies, and I mean babies, not grandchildren yet, but if I really wanted seahorse babies, I'd be doing all the stuff we've talked about over the weeks to make the tank cleaner, separate them and put them in, different tanks, and, kind of separate them off. Yeah, no, I've been slacking and been lazy just because I'm kind of just enjoying the seahorses. But you're not wrong. You're not wrong. I could make it happen if I tried harder, I'm sure. But I never had this issue before because it didn't matter. You stuck seahorses in a tank and they had babies. That's my experience every time until now.
I've gone through spells where I couldn't get any.
But was it with the same seahorses, or like did the seahorses that didn't?
Yeah, I guess it was the same seahorse.
Did the seahorses that didn't give you fry end up giving you fry later?
No.
See, I think they're just stubborn ass. No, I don't think I'm getting fry from these guys. And it's probably too small tank. But go ahead. What?
I just bought more seahorses until I had ones that would produce.
Sorry, I'm laughing. Zen Ginger said, I'm surprised Kelly didn't say, whoops, we lost Ray. Wonder how that happened. I should have done that. That should have been my play.
Oops.
But anyways, I'm
That was
like,
good.
when I get like, I just got busy with work and stuff, so it hasn't, like, I'm back to where I'm right in Holly's shoes, where I'm like, do I really want Fry? But when I get back to serious, because I never want to give up Seahorses. I never want to. I want to raise Fry again. I will. And even if if I ever separate them, who knows? They might pair up and do something different. And if I don't, then I'll do something different in the future. You know, it's not, I don't consider it a lose, right? I didn't lose. I just,
Come back and tell me that again when you're 80.
Ray.
Yeah, the thing is, what most people tend to do is they get really excited. They set up a tank and they throw everything in it but the kitchen sink.
Yeah.
Then they wonder why they keep losing everything. And it's like I tell people, start out small, set up a tank, put one pair in, one pair, and wait and see how they go. Make sure you can maintain a stable temp. I mean, I just had one of the Ingerbird that one of the things came out of the tank and it let off this horrible screeching noise.
Oh, no.
That.
But it's one of those things where take your time, enjoy what you've got, and don't go to the local pet store that sells dog stuff and everything else. Find somebody that really does know fish and seahorses if you want to get seahorses, and work with them and listen to them, because you're going to end up with a much higher success rate and a lot less problems, because the reason they know all the problems is because they made all those mistakes when they were first setting up.
Sure.
And it's not that you're stupid, it's that there's a long, big, steep learning curve there.
But for someone who's trying to set up like Zen Ginger, and we're gonna hold you to this, Zen. We need you to set up the Seahorse tank. We've been talking about
pictures.
this. We've been talking about this too long, but we're not pushing you. All I'm saying is, it's hard. I get your point. You've talked this up. You want to do this. You're researching. You want to set it up properly. But then it's like, for me, I told you guys, I admitted it. It's hard for me to post pictures of my tank because there's nothing extravagant about it. It's very basic. My seahorses are freaking gorgeous. Okay. But that's it. That's all I need for my tank, right? So maybe I don't post a lot of pictures because maybe other people wouldn't be like, oh, that tank's amazing. But I don't care because it makes me happy. Now, if you want other stuff, yeah, I get it. And you can. But like Cheryl said, start with the basics. Start with a tank. We'll be impressed if you post a tank with seahorses, period. That will impress the heck out of us. And they'll be beautiful and you'll enjoy them and you'll talk about what they're doing and it'll be great. And then if you decide you want to add some of this or something of that, at least if you do it slowly, you'll know when, if any problems occur, what caused them and how to resolve them because of what you've added. When people throw a bunch of shit in the tank at one time, you have no
Just
idea.
get them a house, give them some great filtration and control your temps and water perimeters. Toss in some hitches for them and they'll be fine. And then you can work on the other stuff as you go. Then you'll start to see stuff and think about it.
Yep.
You know, and think, oh, I think I'd like to do this. Things occur to you along the way because you might change your mind. You might do it and then change your mind on it partway through, like I did.
Well, and she said she's definitely doing it. She's just genuinely OCD and obsessed about I can't even talk. Obsessed about every option, and there are so many variables that every time I answer one question, a new one comes up. Well, that's why we're here to chill with you and talk. I am too, but it's become, you know, I'm starting to realize that can be a hindrance. You know, when you second guess everything and you keep my girls don't understand me at all because they'll be like, we need shoes. Here's the shoes I want. And I'm like, wait, my girls got their licenses. You guys know this. Here's a good example. They got their license and I'm like, okay, we have to do car insurance. And they're like, well, just put us on your policy. And I was like, no, we've got to shop around. Duh. We've got to call every agency in the world and get quotes. And they're like, you're talking about $5. We'll pay it. We don't care. Just shut up and do it. So sometimes you can go overboard, second guessing, trying to get the best deal, trying to figure everything out. Whereas you're going to figure it out once you have the seahorses. I'm telling you, like Holly talks about these seahorses like they're her kids. We all think of it, except for Ray. Ray's a dick. I'm just kidding, Ray.
Yeah.
But no, I'm just kidding. But I mean, you learn them, right? And then you can tell when something's wrong. They speak to you in their own way. You know, I'm done rambling. But did that make
What kind of
sense?
things they like? Because the seahorses are all different. Mine have different preferences of where they like to sit and what they like to do. But I'll say as a beginner, one thing that I did was I put a lot of different things in my tank to start because I wanted it to look a certain way. I wanted the corals, I wanted the reef style and all that with my seahorses. But what I learned was that it was more work than I really wanted to do to take care of all those different things in that tank.
Right.
Yeah.
And like you were saying, Kelly, like you have to work on it every day. It was very labor intensive, and everything had, oh, does this need this or does that need that, or what's wrong with this thing over here? The less things to keep track of taking care of, the easier it is, I think, for someone who's just beginning.
It's more enjoyable if you can kick back and look at it and it looks pretty. It doesn't have to be all full of everything, but you can kick back and watch your seahorses. If they're young and reckless, they'll be playing in the flow and getting shot across the tank if you have a power head in there. If the male is pregnant, he may use the power head or an airline tube and move back and forth and do pouch massages while he's pregnant. There's a lot more. It sounds crazy, but I've witnessed this long enough. I can tell you all kinds of goofy things that they do.
No,
but you can't really if you can't see them.
Yeah,
I agree.
And
if you're
one thing at a
concentrating,
time, and then learn that thing.
Yeah.
And one more thing, learn that thing. Add one more thing, learn that thing, instead of all at once. I think can be overwhelming.
Right, because the overall consensus that I think we're all saying, and the point is, if you throw everything into a tank and something goes wrong, you don't know what went wrong. It's the same thing with trying to fix something. You don't know what's wrong if you did when you're trying to figure out what's wrong with the seahorse. If you keep throwing everything at that seahorse, you don't know what worked and what didn't, and etc. Same thing with setup. Set it up kind of basic. You'll enjoy just this. I mean, I could sit and watch all night long. I really could. And the bigger tank has more in it, and I can't see the seahorses as well because I need to clean it, to be honest. But I mean, it's still focused on the seahorses, right? That's my sense.
Yeah, keeping seahorses, no matter who, even if you've got an expert that's helping you, you're still going to make mistakes.
Sure.
You're still going to have problems because it's just like when I use dechlorinators. First of all, I don't measure the amount of chlorine, and I don't measure the amount of dechlorinator when I'm sterilizing the system. I've been doing this for long enough. I know I just do it, and I know what to look for. But that's not what I would tell somebody that's just starting out. I would go through the steps to carefully measure out everything. And after you've done it enough times, you get a feel for it.
Sure.
It's like a while back, I had over 50 3.5-inch erectus in a 58-gallon tank. I didn't lose any of them. They were all ones that I raised, and I had to move them pretty quick to get big fast. But it was one of those things where if I tried that 15 years ago, I would have killed them all within the first couple.
So the bottom line though is for a newcomer, for Zen, don't be afraid to set up. You have been here with us, and when you get ready to literally do it, we're going to be here to walk you through it every step of the way. And you already know the basics. You already know it's set up the filtration, make sure that's adequate, have an oversized skimmer, have some sort of mechanical and biological filtration covering your butt, and then start with the Seahorses. You don't have to. You could do fake. You could do real. None of that really matters. It's that don't throw everything in the tank at once. Add it slowly, as Holly was saying, so you can see how each thing works. And if you want to concentrate on the Seahorses, which will be enough, I promise you. I love watching my Seahorse tank.
Yeah.
That's got nothing else in it. You
Start
can start
small,
there.
and once you learn it and go through all the newbie stuff, you're going to find time in your hands. You can set up another tank.
Yep.
That's right. Set up your
Yep.
And that one's set up, then you're going to set up another tank.
Add another. Just keep going. But little steps, a little at a time, make it easier on yourself. Don't overwhelm yourself.
But it's hard. I
remember too. My first one, had everything in it.
No. I was going to say my first one, like the one that everybody messages me about. I know I keep bringing it up, guys, but I am proud of it. The one that was in the Reef Hobbyist magazine that had the macros everywhere.
Yeah.
I have posted pictures showing how it started. And with the macros starting out, and it looked like total shit, right? The macros just grew, and over a year's time, it became this beautiful thing.
Pretty.
But I post a picture of that tank, and everybody's like, "I want that. How do I do that tomorrow?"
Yeah,
well, you can't. You can't do that tomorrow.
It's not going to happen.
That's not how it works.
Yeah.
I started with the Seahorses. I started with Seahorses and macros, but the tank looked awful. There were little sprouts of macros here, there, and everywhere. And it just looked stupid.
They grew and filled in.
They grew, right. So it's not an overnight thing. It is about patience. It is about learning your Seahorses, learning your tank, learning what it needs. So
you're going to make mistakes. You're going to run into some problems periodically. And the thing it happens to all of us, and we all go through it. And don't feel embarrassed. Ask questions. Get with people that have done this, that have a proven track record, that can actually help you get through it. And don't beat yourself up if something goes wrong, because we've all been there. That's how we've learned.
Well, and Zen Ginger has actually had 14 freshwater tanks. So, she knows how to watch a tank and, learn a tank and learn her inhabitants. I'm ready for you to set up. I love that you're careful and that you're trying to wait and make sure you do things right. But when you're ready, you'll be ready. I have no doubt. Yeah. No doubt at all.
You're going to do great. You're not going to have.
Yep. Okay, guys, I would love to actually have a Wine Wednesday that ended on an earlier note, but is there anything else we need to chat about?
Nothing from my point, and I'm thinking of dropping out here to go pay attention to my dog. I was up in my cottage last week and just come back Monday night, and she kind of got used to me sitting holding her all the time because I didn't have anything else to do. So I could hold her all the time and try to get food into her and get fluids into her. Now her nose is out of joint because I've had to do other things since we got home.
Well, she needs your love and care then, Ray. I'm totally...
Yeah, well, she's got a long road to go yet, but it's a little bit at a time, and hope that somewhere along the line the vets come up with some answers.
Sure.
So she's almost as needy as my Seahorses.
Well, I'd say this dog is needier than anything I've ever had, even kids.
Aw. It gives you something to concentrate on, though. I mean,
Yeah.
and I hate it for you, but your love is helping her. Him, excuse me. Oh, who's coming in now?
No, her.
Wait, we got somebody
The last
coming
dog was
in.
to him, this one's to her.
Is that Vince?
Hello?
Yeah, it's only me.
Vince.
Hi.
What's up, Vince?
Hey, what's up?
Anyway, I'm going to sign off now and go to my dog.
Ray, go take care of him.
Right.
Her.
Have a
Sorry.
good
Good
evening.
night,
everyone.
Ray.
Good night, Ray.
Good night, Ray.
Right.
How you doing, Vince? Any thoughts to what we've been talking about?
Yeah, I've been trying to sign on for a little bit, but
Oh, sorry.
oh no, it's not your fault. It was my fault. Let me turn some light on. Ah. Well, when you were talking about the reef tank, I mean about the seahorses and temperature, I think it has a lot to do with the environment of the tank and the maturity of the tank. Because there's some tanks that they just run. You don't lose fish. You don't lose snails.
Yeah.
You don't lose anything. It's a perfect tank. I mean, it's just an ecosystem that you created. And because my first seahorses were reed-eye in a reef tank. And they did good. I mean,
What do you mean by a reef tank, though?
But you
Well-
had the tank for a while, right? It was
yeah, the
established
tank was a
before
mature
the
tank.
Seahorse. Yeah.
And I got them. They were wild caught reed-eye. And I
That
put 'em
matters
in.
too.
And they took survived that tank. I mean,
So, what do you mean by reef tank, though? Like
Well,
coral, reef lighting?
I think a mature tank
Mm-hmm.
of
Yeah.
eddy tank, once it matures, you're trying to create an ecosystem
Agree.
for that fish to live in that box, and you can do it with filtration, live rock, or whatever it is, and it don't happen overnight.
Mm-hmm.
It can take
No,
a year,
it
2 years
doesn't.
to reach that level to where you got no disease in it. And I can add something to my tank. I only buy for my reef tank from somebody I know that quarantines his fish.
Right, but here's the problem with what you just said, and
Yeah.
I'm being devil's advocate because I agree with what you just said. However, there are pathogens that are omnipresent. They're always there, and Vibrio is one of them, and mycobacteria can be one of them too.
Yeah, but
So Vibrio is always in a tank, and the reason that we talk temperature so much when we talk seahorses. And I mean, you succeeded. I'm not disagreeing with you. But the reason that I say to a newcomer, make sure you have things that can handle a lower temperature in the tank.
yeah,
It's because no matter how established your tank is, no matter how long you've had it running, no matter what's in it, if you have an omnipresent pathogen like Vibrio that won't hurt the seahorses at 72 degrees, it will and can hurt them at 80. I mean, it will.
yeah.
I shouldn't say it will. I should say it can.
Well, it
Right?
can.
Because if the seahorses have this, if they're just super immune, and they like if they're wild caught and they're
Yeah.
really healthy adult seahorses, they could probably handle it. Whereas a captive bred seahorse that has never dealt with those pathogens and they get into a tank that's 80 degrees,
Yeah.
and it's not about the temperature hurting the seahorse, it's about the temperature,
Bacteria growth.
the bacteria
Yeah.
growing faster and the Vibrio
Well,
going faster.
I
and
think
then
there
they
is
can attack.
something to be said for a healthy, mature tank
I do too.
too.
I guess
Right.
it would,
If you're smart enough to be using like probiotics, and if you have an ecosystem where you're doing phyto and you're doing copepods and you have that whole deal going on, that might
It
make a
is an
difference.
ecosystem.
But
But
for
this-
me, my deal stopper is temperature.
yeah.
Go
see,
ahead,
but
Vince. Sorry.
what happens is when you do this for years, you work at taking the work out of what you're doing and get nature to
Sure.
take over and not have to deal with it. You know, I raise everything I raise. I don't have chillers, and we were without air conditioning and stuff like that. But I don't keep my seahorses down to 72 degrees or 70, never. And maybe 74 at times, 78, you know, they go up and they fluctuate. And they do. I mean, and I've never had problems, you know. And if I was to get a chiller, it wouldn't be for my seahorses; it'd be for my reef tank.
Really?
Yeah, definitely for my reef tank over my seahorses.
Well, the thing that the primary concern with seahorses, particularly erectus, is that they carry
Vibrio.
what is Vibrio, and as such, Vibrio becomes profoundly more toxic at above 74 degrees, which is why we typically stick with this, keep them below 74. It doesn't have to do with as much the temperature as it has to do with the Vibrio.
Yeah.
But the temperature is what affects the Vibrio.
Well, it affects it.
Exactly.
But the health of the environment that they're in can counteract that.
Counteract that is
It can
what I'm
definitely counteract.
As I said, if you're an experienced keeper and you've got you've got a really balanced ecosystem and you know your tank and you're maybe dosing phyto or you're dosing probiotics or you just, are getting lucky. I mean, I'm not saying that can't happen at all. I'm just saying I'm going to stick to, for newcomers, stay before 74 degrees or stay under 74 degrees just to be safe.
Yeah.
It's easier, It's a good checkpoint. But I see Caleb, hi. And they want to know if
there's a big difference between someone who's a beginner and starting out and starting
Sure.
their first tank and someone who's been keeping a tank for years. And that tank's like well established and healthy and has proven itself over time as compared to someone brand new just throwing up a tank and then putting all these things in it.
For the record though, Zen Ginger is not really new. She's new to seahorses, she's new to reefing, but she's not new to taking care of an aquarium. So Zen, hey, you might be the person that can set up a beautiful reef-like natural tank with seahorses and succeed.
Well, I agree.
mean, I'm not saying you can't.
Yeah.
I'm giving for all newcomers. My advice is going to stick to every time I've had a tank that I kept over 74 degrees with seahorses, it did not go well. It would go well for him, but it would not last. Vincent has a different experience. So
but I think everybody's gonna, when they're in this hobby, whether it's fish or seahorses or something else, it takes time to learn.
Sure.
Yes.
To be able to look at your tank. I mean, you can look at your tank and know things ain't right just by behaviors of fish or behaviors of coral. I mean, you just, over time, I never check I don't do water tests on anything, but it's just, I know how, without water changes, I find my reef actually does better.
That's true. I agree, but not in a seahorse tank. Okay.
No,
Come on.
not in a seahorse tank, because you're always going to have a buildup. And I don't get anything from Robert King. But
You what?
the char chamber, it's been over a year that I've been running char. I have never changed it out to char because I actually think the benefit comes later.
When it becomes a biofilter. Yep.
Is because I don't think I've ever seen in my whole life anything that has the natural biological ability that the char chamber does, or the char the way it is. I've increased my bubbles but it keeps my seahorse. All my seahorses are in the 40-gallon, and they've been in there for the last couple months, and do a water change every couple weeks. But everything's just fine, feed them.
So how many are in there, Vince?
I know there's at least 30 of them.
Okay,
Wow.
wait. We have a really important question.
Yeah.
Is that a goose or a duck?
I've been wondering that.
That's a frog.
A frog. Okay,
Yeah.
excuse me. All right, we just
Yeah.
wondered. But no, and I would never say that you're wrong.
Well, I would never
because you're
tell
doing
anybody
it.
to do it.
Yeah,
I was gonna
right.
say,
I would never tell
that's the thing.
anybody go ahead
For someone,
and
don't
do
do
it
that.
because it's I don't
That's
know.
a
Yeah, that's a frog. We had a rainstorm, a big one come in. We had a big one come in today, a rainstorm,
Yeah.
and they get loud after it rains.
They're
Holy
happy.
moly. Anyways, go on. I'm sorry.
No, so I wouldn't tell anybody, and how to do what I do. I do recommend the char chamber, though.
Mhm.
If you're not going
Oh,
to
I
have
do
it
too.
in the display,
That's
put it in the sump, and don't look for immediate, because it's going to be better, I think, over time. I need to get with
Yeah.
Robert because I need to let him know after a year. I'm pretty convinced that he came
Just
up with.
leave it alone and not even change the char.
I
Interesting.
thought frogs were supposed to go ribbit.
I know, right? It's saying,
He's barking.
sounds like
He's
it
a
sounds like it's saying Robert. No, I'm just
Yeah.
kidding. But no, Vincent. Actually, I'm
I
right
couldn't
there.
help that.
I'm right there with you, and I will tell you the mail that I got from you.
Yeah,
I have been, because I've had trouble with my all-in-one
yeah,
tank. I had to re-plug in things in different places. And so when I turn things off to feed, because I don't have a mechanical way to turn things off
Yeah.
to feed, the char chamber will go off and it won't
Yeah.
be bubbling, or I'll turn it down low or whatever. And the male, when he's done eating, will go and hitch to the airline and just stare at me.
yeah.
Like, turn on my bubbles, mama. Turn this
He's
back
telling me
on.
something.
He knows the char chamber that he's all about the char chamber. So I agree with you.
He wants the pouch massage.
Well, I don't know what he wants, but he sleeps
Yeah.
there.
He
It's
likes
his territory. He loves it. And I agree with you, though. It
Sadie
makes a
and
difference.
Dandy love it too. They like just to sit by it.
Well, the only reason that I ever asked or, made the question, how often should you change the char, is because, Vincent, did you notice that when you first add the char chamber, the Robert King char chamber,
Yeah.
that all of a sudden your tank is glorious?
Yeah.
I mean, it's ridiculously clean. It's so clean, and you're like, oh my gosh, I never have to do a water change again. But then after time, you can tell it's working, it's doing something, it's working as a biofilter. The seahorses don't get sick even when you slack. I
Yeah.
get all of those points, but it's not as clear and perfect. So I was thinking about changing some out just for that clarity of water.
But see now, the
Just the
clarity is for
charcoal
you.
effect.
The clarity is for you. The
That's
seahorses,
true.
they don't care.
That's true.
But that
That's-
biological, I don't know, because I don't know. I'm not like Dan. I don't know probiotics or anything like that. But it's almost like that thing produces something, a cleansing effect. That biological stuff happening with the air, and because I don't think I could do what I've done with. I've always been able to keep seahorses, but being able to push it the way I have,
Push the
Yeah.
limits
I don't
of
think
the
I could have done it without the char chamber. I'll never know. And I'm not going to try it without the char chamber. But,
Right.
No,
I get what you're saying. And
It's like
go ahead.
the longer you've been at this, the more things you find that work for you.
Yeah.
And this is why I build all my own sumps and all of that kind of stuff. And I got tanks. I do all kinds of crazy things and redo stuff. because I know at this point what I want and what I don't want to deal with. And like the char chamber, it works great. It's like instant crystal clear water.
Yeah.
And up until that point, of course, I'd always used activated charcoal, so I don't have to play with little bags anymore. But it's one of those things where it takes time for everybody to, particularly somebody starting new, to utilize all these different things that we take for granted.
Yeah.
Yeah, but a char chamber isn't expensive, and I
No,
think
char
anybody
chamber's
starting a
actually
Seahorse tank should have
very
one.
reasonable. Very reasonable. Char chamber is very reasonable. And if you don't like it in the tank, you know, maybe you have an all-in-one. You can stick it in the back, or you can stick it in your sump. And the water is in the sump. I don't care what they look like.
Yeah, I just have mine sitting right in the tank, and it doesn't bother me. I put one in each corner in the back in the 75 gallon, and then my 55 gallon has one in one corner. And I don't notice them really. There's too much other stuff. So
Well,
Well,
I
your
was
tank
just
must be-
talking last week, I think, about how I have been slacking and not doing the maintenance that I should be doing on my Seahorse tanks. And the all-in-one is more important because it's smaller without a sump. But with that char chamber in it, I just have I shouldn't jinx myself. Where's some wood?
Yeah.
I'm knocking on wood. But I just haven't had any problems because it's handling it. You know, I mean, I agree with you, Vincent. I think it's like a really good thing for a Seahorse keeper to have in their tank for sure.
You know, and you earlier you were talking about, Ray made a funny joke about your seahorses not having fry, but but let me. God, that frog is driving me nuts.
You're fine.
you need a frog, Kelly.
I know, right?
We need some inspiration.
A week ago, I think it was a week ago, maybe 2 weeks, I mentioned competition because I got all these seahorses, male, female, in a tank. Well, they're not producing fries right now because they're all too much competition. It's like the focus is everywhere on food and stuff like that and hanging out. And you see that where they try to court, but it's just too many get involved in it.
That's how it is in my tank too, because I have one boy and 4 ladies.
So I think you might have to go.
Too many choices.
You might have to put them in, divide the tank maybe with a screen and separate.
Put them in pairs or something.
The pairs.
Yeah.
And maybe you'll have better luck.
No, I've been meaning to move them around for a long time. I still have tanks set up everywhere. I'm just lazy.
Mine just go behind the rocks and get it on.
But what?
Quite literally. I've had sometimes 3 pairs deliver within 15 minutes of each other when I'm trying to rush out the door, go to work.
I was going to say, go ahead.
And the smallest ones, not only do they complete the egg transfer behind the rocks, they deliver behind the rocks.
Yeah. But see, with me, I have never, and to be clear, my Barbori never had fry. My Reed Eye never had fry. So, you know, it was always Erectus that had fry for me. But when I had Erectus in a tank, I just never had to do anything. They were giving me fry. I mean, instantly. So, but it's a smaller tank. I've got too much competition. I totally hear all of your recommendations and thoughts, and I agree with them. I want the fry, but the more that I say it and think about it, the more I think I can't even take care of the tank.
You're too busy.
What am I doing? What am I doing?
I came across
my favorite reproductive one.
Maybe they're not having babies on purpose because they knew I couldn't handle them.
I know you're
Maybe
busy.
They're saying I'm not going to be an adoptive mother.
You're not a good seahorse mom.
My favorite of all time was I had one of my pairs of combs. They'd already produced fry, and they were definitely bonded to each other. One of the other older females tries to get between her and her mate. They were courting.
Mm-hmm.
This female turns around, grabs the other female around her torso with using his tail, and pins her to the bottom, the substrate in the tank. I mean, we're talking serious aggression here.
Sure.
It's not the kind of thing you normally expect seahorses to do, but they are capable of fairly high levels of aggression when they want to be.
Sure, absolutely. What are we seeing in your background, Vincent? Anything going on? Where are you at?
My wife's office.
Oh, those windows look like tanks. I thought you were showing us tanks.
This
Yeah,
is
I got a huge tank out here.
this is our sunroom.
Anyways, no, I know I can resolve my fry issue when I'm ready. They're probably not giving them to me because I'm not ready. Even though I want them, I'm not ready for them. So
But
they're probably doing me a favor.
But I've had them take over a year.
See, right, exactly.
To
So they're just waiting until I'm ready and they're ready, and it'll be fine. I'm not worried.
How many do you have in that tank?
5.
It's a 40?
I've got
5 and a 40?
seahorses and a 40. Yep.
Yeah, that's pushing your luck for fighting.
I know it.
Yeah.
And the Robert King Char Chamber is handling it with the K1 and the skimmer and such, but yeah. No, I know I'm pushing it, and please don't do this if you're new. It's not smart. Especially if you want to fry.
The pair of combs, the female that beat up the other female, they were in a DSA 65 that I have.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so they had plenty of room. It wasn't like it was crowded, but she was definitely trying to get in on the action and paid the price.
Well, no, I told this story before. When I first added, because I had 2 seahorses, a male and a female from Ocean Rider, I had a female from Holly, and I had, and that was it in the tank, and nobody was doing anything. A lot of courting, nothing resulted. Then I added a male and a female from Vincent, and all of a sudden, I'm telling you, the male from Ocean Rider, who had been trying to get laid, and he couldn't, nobody wanted him, he started sulking because everybody loved the new cute boy. And the girls were just all over him and flirting and everything. And he went into a corner and sulked. And you could tell he just, yeah, I know, it's so sad. But he's kind of a bully, so, whatever. But anyways.
What my favorite along those lines is I had a young pair that I raised of tiger tails, combs. And he was, probably only about 3.5, 4 inches. But he'd already figured out how to inflate his pouch.
Mm-hmm.
And he was trying to impress the ladies, and one of them got interested, and she swam over and started looking at him. Next thing I know, he's wrapped his tail around her, and he's dragging her in circles, literally. And each time he'd release her, she'd swim off, and then she'd come back and look at him again, and they repeat it.
Wow.
Well, she reached the point, she swam up, hitched to his head, and she's the one that I never could figure out if she was trying to tell him to use his brain or get his pouch out of it. Get his head out of his pouch.
I love when you tell that story, Miss Cheryl. But
that was hysterical.
Oh,
it was about 3 months later they did actually reproduce, but they were both way too young, and he just didn't know any better.
Sure. Vincent, hey, I am going to have to end this here in a minute, you guys, because I said this an hour ago, but now we're still going. But I did want to ask, since you joined, Vincent, anything new with you? Anything going on with you?
No, I sold my boat yesterday.
Cool.
Yes, my old boat, my
old one.
the one that Holly liked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now I can focus on my new boat, and we've been going out quite a bit.
That's
on the
awesome.
boat.
Yeah, that's sweet.
So one of the things that Holly did mention she wanted to kind of talk about, and we're gonna have to do it briefly because I gotta end this, guys. But what do you do when you leave for more than a day, Vincent? What do you do with your seahorses?
For the seahorses,
Yeah.
I get somebody to feed them for me.
Okay.
But I did have this last time a mishap where they lost the key to the house.
Oh shit.
And they missed the key.
Oh no!
Oops.
And, it didn't hurt anything.
They were okay.
Yeah, they were fine.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think we freak out, but the thing is, I mean, a day is not. I know I don't want to give any newcomer any impression that feeding them regularly and on a
Yeah.
good schedule is not important, because it is.
Well, if you
But
go,
once you have seahorses for a minute and they're healthy and you've bulked them up and they're fat little cuties, well, then, they miss a day, it's not going to kill them. It just won't.
well, Ocean Rider, if you go on their site, I don't know, maybe they changed it, but they always recommended not feeding them 1 day a week.
Fasting.
That's Peter's old. That's Peter's old
Yeah, I figure
stuff.
that's probably old. You know, I mean, they always.
I mean, I don't like that, but the bottom line is, you obviously can do it.
That's going back
Skip a
over
day
20
now
years.
and random. Mhm.
Yeah, and then my reef tank is not hard to feed. You know, I put a lot of algae wafers in, not wafers, sheets in and stuff like that before I leave. And then my clownfish, they're on a feeder.
I didn't even know you were doing clownfish.
Well,
I didn't know that.
I have a pair of black storms, Ozzy and Harry.
You just posted
that's right. That's right.
Yeah,
he posted a picture of those.
Yeah, they're my
I knew
wife.
that.
They're my wife's, Ozzy and Harriet.
I forgot. I'm sorry. I remember now. Sorry.
Yeah.
You weren't you the one that posted the picture today? Was it today?
That was me. Yeah. No, that's
yeah.
today. I can't remember the video.
I saw it today. I want to say we were on our way to Sacramento. We went car part shopping because my husband's hobby is VWs. He's got 4 plastic VW Beetles, and he's about ready to start building a new engine, and he's going to switch things around on the cars and finish stuff that needs done. So he went and got disc brakes and engine stuff, carburetors, I think. What'd you get today, honey? Carburetor, yeah, because he's got to build an engine. But apparently right now, engine building for these cars at least is like way behind.
Oh, yeah.
So he was thinking about doing like a turnkey, but the guy he talked to today in Sacramento is like, I got to be honest, we're like 70 engines behind right now. So well, I can build my own. I just need the bottom end. And yeah, so he's going to build it.
Yeah, I'm selling my Harley. Going to pretty soon, and time to give that up.
Oh, that's too bad. That sounds fun, though.
Yeah. Well, ever since the radiation, I can't turn my neck.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
It's hard to ride, and it's not safe anymore.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like I have to give it up. You know?
Well, I'm sorry to hear that.
Question.
What?
Gina just asked a question.
Okay.
Do you guys just rely on frozen or prepared foods, or do you also add copepods to your system? Copepods are too small for the adults. So they're great for working with fry. I really like the Apanamensis copepods for newborn fry, but they won't work for the adults. In terms of frozen or live, you can get live mysis shrimp. And in fact, you can even get saltwater mysis shrimp, which is actually nutritionally better for it. A better HUFA and GPA profile. But you can also add things like krill, frozen krill, which is there's one. What is it now that's out of the Arctic? They're producing them out of the Arctic. We're just now getting that coming in, and I've tried it with my seahorses, and they do seem to like it. It's just a little big. I chop it up for them, and they're definitely taking it without a lot of problems.
But if your seahorses won't, don't fret, because mine won't. Right? If anything's chopped up and doesn't have eyeballs, it doesn't look like a shrimp, they're not eating it, and they don't like the krill. But go on, Cheryl.
Yeah, but amphipods will also work for the larger for the adults. Again, not suitable for newborn fry.
And mine would not
But
eat amphipods at all.
yours
I
won't?
think it really
Depends
depends
on your
on your
seahorse, I think.
seahorses. Depends on your seahorses. It's definitely worth a try. If you're trying to set up, Gina, you in particular, if you're trying to set up an ecosystem like Vincent was talking about, where you want to establish a tank and you want it to have all this other stuff in it, I don't think that's a bad idea to try to get the phyto and the amphipods and copepods and all that stuff going. You want a
Especially if
mandarin.
you go with a mandarin, yeah,
Yeah.
because when I started out, I kept a mandarin with my
Mhm.
seahorses. They did great together, and I kept copepods also. But yeah, the seahorses were not interested whatsoever in the copepods. But
They
the
would
But
be
it
too
mandarin,
helped the
small.
ecosystem.
yeah.
Right. So it just depends on what you're trying to do. I don't think, as far as feeds, I'm right back to I feed frozen foods. I literally get my seahorses a treat
Mhm.
once a month, once every 2 months, whatever. Whereas I'll buy either Artemia or mycid shrimp and I will enrich them and give the seahorses a treat. But their diet is frozen food. That's it.
And I only do frozen. I
Yeah.
only do frozen mysis once in a very great while. I've given them back when I was raising the babies. I used to give them the adult brine shrimp
Mm-hmm.
after I'd disinfected them and
Yep.
enriched them and all that.
Yep.
And my seahorses would eat the adult brine shrimp, but they would not eat amphipods.
Mm-hmm.
They would not eat copepods. I did feed mysids with mixed results, live mysids.
Oh, see,
And,
my seahorses love the live
and
mysids.
and some of mine did, some of mine didn't. But then I had problems afterwards, which I kind of think had to do with not cleaning them first because I didn't think I had to clean the mysids.
Sure.
And they were messy in the tank too.
Sure.
But I've had great results with just frozen. They
Yeah.
like
I mean,
they
that's
eat
it.
it readily and it's easy. And like
Yep.
Dan said, he's known people that only fed frozen and had their seahorses for years. So
Sure.
I think that's
Yeah.
fine. And live
I
food,
will
good.
perk up and mention I will perk up and mention that if you're trying to breed, that's one of the key things that you can do
Mhm.
is mess with temperature, mess with feeds.
Food,
When
yeah.
you start giving them live feeds, all of a sudden they get
Hmm.
perky. But if you're just trying to keep seahorses, you can stick with really can. That's
Hmm.
the
That's
truth.
all I
I
feed.
suspect part of the difference is since I'm home all the time, I feed small amounts several times a day,
Mm-hmm.
which means they're always hungry. Whereas yours, they get much larger quantities of food at fewer settings, and I think that tends to fill them up, and maybe why they're not willing to accept other food sources. That would be my best guess.
So yeah, because I just pigged out for breakfast, and now
Yeah,
what are these things running around? Oh, it's time to sit down for lunch because it's
exactly.
easy.
And they're dependent upon you and relying on you. Yeah.
That's
Why
literally
would
what
you
mine
be stuck with
did.
it
They
alone?
went to the dish. I had live food in there, and they're like going to the dish, waiting for me to serve frozen, and they're looking at the live food getting in their dish and getting disgusted at it, like, Mom, there's a bug in my dish.
Yeah, see, I don't know that I agree with what Cheryl
Walking
said.
on my plate.
Okay, who pooped in the pot?
It
Yeah,
could
exactly.
I think it really just does depend on the seahorses. I really do because uh whether it's
Mine
they're
are very
spoiled by
domesticated.
mom like Holly or whether they're just spoiled in general or I mean I've had Dan say the reason that seahorses often don't recognize brine shrimp
Mhm,
as a food is because it's
It's
not a
not a
food
natural
they'll
food.
ever see in the wild, right? I
mhm,
mean,
Yeah,
they would never
mhm.
see Artemia in the wild. So it just, I think it just depends on so many things, but it's always worth a try. And the cool and wonderful thing is that captive bred seahorses will always eat frozen mysis. So there you go. And
I'll
if you
tell
want
you
to,
something funny.
Ca-
We'll finish and then I'll tell you. I have a funny story.
Holly, one thing I may do differently that's making a difference also is I broadcast feed and keep all the power heads going so the food gets blown around.
Oh yeah. I do that
I
in this
don't
other tank, not in my other one, but this one I do.
I don't
and
do
stuff
it.
won't go
I
out.
don't use the feeding stations because then they get too locked into I just have to come here and I can eat.
That's my story. Here's something funny. Okay,
Okay.
so last week, remember I told you for Sadie's birthday, I gave them some new things.
Right.
So I put a bubbling reef on one side of the tank and a new plant. And remember, in that tank, there's just Sadie and Dandy. They're the only two seahorses.
Right.
It's a 55-gallon. Well, after the new things came, they decided to hang out over there. But that's the opposite side of the tank from where I feed them. Well, what happened was they liked it so much over there, apparently, they wouldn't come eat. They wouldn't come to eat at meal times. They were hanging out over there, and I had to roust them to get them to swim over to the food. And finally, at one point, it got to the point where I actually was picking up Dandy and carrying him halfway across the tank and letting him go so he would go to his dish. And Sadie would see, like, she knew it was time to eat, but she'd be looking and looking at me and watch me manhandle Dandy. And then she's looking at me and she slowly lets go of her hitch, slowly drifts across the tank to where her feeding station is. Like she knows where to get, she knows what to do.
Yeah.
And
See,
this
mine are
went
always
for
starving.
a few days. It went on for a few days, and finally I said, screw it. And I added another dish for Dandy on that side of the tank next to his new favorite hitch.
Mm.
And he's been eating there in that little dish. So I don't have to carry him halfway across the tank to go eat. And Sadie has been coming to eat on her own at her regular feeding station, but she takes her own sweet time to get there. And what I did though was I didn't feed her a couple times. So
Sure.
she missed a few meals. And since then, now in the morning, she's waiting at the feeding station to make sure she gets a meal.
No
Well,
more
the thing is,
I think
tough
I
love.
covered and solved the
well,
problem finally. But
you're not there all the time, so you
Mhm.
can't do it like I do. Because I feed them enough that if they haven't cleared it up in about 5 to 7 minutes, I'm going to clean it out,
Yeah,
and they're not going to get fed again for at least 2 to 3 hours.
yeah,
And so I
mine
feed
are
much smaller portions,
so
much
they
more
eat at
frequent.
6:30, noon, and 3 o'clock normally. If I'm here, like if I'm gone during one of those
Yeah,
times, they don't get that feeding. But normally there's 3 meals or 2 meals a day. And they know the times normally. They're used to it. So they're normally waiting at the feeding area or they'll come when
yeah.
they see me. But for some reason, they got that new stuff and they got lazy. They didn't
They
want to
got
leave.
spoiled.
But then, they started getting smarter than me. And finally, I'm like, wait a minute.
Right?
Get them a glass seahorse. You want to have some fun with them? I did that to a bunch of juveniles that I had in a tank.
A
Yeah,
giant
put it
one.
in the tank. And they kept circling it and circling it
Sure.
and slowly getting closer, and weaving back and forth and weaving back and forth and kept looking at it. And this went on for almost a half hour. Finally, one of them got brave and hitched to it. Then they had over 50 bouncing baby seahorses trying to hitch to it.
Zen
It was one
Ginger,
of those
hey
things I've
guys,
seen.
sorry to interrupt, but Zen Ginger wants to know if you guys have any of your own social media. Please feel free to put your links and descriptions in the comment section so people can find you. Because Holly, you share all the time. Vincent, you
I
share all the
do,
time.
yeah.
Yeah, so
But
make
it's
sure that
just
you share
on,
them.
but it's just on my Facebook. Which,
Yeah.
I mean, you can send me a friend request and then, I'll see it. And then you can see most of what I post is just spur of the moment. I'm not organized. So I'm posting stuff all the time, but I don't have a channel or anything formal like that.
Well, and I can't keep up, so yes, absolutely go to the co-host. And Dan has a channel, and Dan has a group, and that's great too. And he has YouTube videos also. Definitely recommend looking at the Seahorse Source videos. They're a little more instructive, like him giving a speech, but they're really good information. Definitely recommend them. Vincent, do you have any links you want to share?
Well, I haven't been using my TikTok, but
See,
I have TikTok, and actually I did it because I could go live.
yeah.
I have enough followers to go live, but I just haven't been doing it lately. I've been
Well, that's awesome.
I'm kind of getting away, trying not to do a whole lot on social media.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard not to, but I try to get away from it. And it's the same thing. Like I saw some reed eye the other day, beautiful, and I thought, dang, I'd like to get him, but then I told myself, no way,
Right.
I'm not raising any more of those guys.
I'm right there with, and reed eye are
Yeah.
so hard. And I would say too, that's funny you said that because we talk about this, that, and the other all the time. I tried TikTok. I can't do it. I can't do TikTok. It's like I got used to Facebook and then I've slacked off because I've been busy. And I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry.
Well, if you're good at
But
it,
and YouTube videos, you guys have seen I've made videos, but they're
You have a
old.
lot of videos. though.
Yeah, but they're old and they're outdated. I need to make new ones. I just can't find the damn time. And TikTok is an easier alternative where it's just a, quick do this.
TikTok, you can make some money.
I
You can
can't.
make some
My
money off of TikTok
daughters are doing TikTok, dude. I
because
can't do it.
I know a guy. He's into fishing, chunky catfish. That guy's making a fortune. He has
Wow.
sponsors, everything, all about fishing, catfishing, and he's getting it. And you
Which he'd be doing anyway, right?
what? Yeah,
I said,
something he
which
does
he would
anyway.
be doing anyway,
Yeah.
right?
And he's
Yeah.
making money, and
Yeah.
he's got bait shops that make baits for him.
I
and
mean,
they
I
sell
found
them.
cool channels. I'm just not willing to put my shit out there.
Well, you just put on a hobby.
Yeah.
If you did it for a hobby, there was a girl on TikTok. Oh man, I can't remember her name. She did a lot of live videos with seahorses, but I can't
Yeah?
remember her name now.
Oh, I know who you're talking about.
She's a young girl. She's young.
I think I know who you're talking about too. Yeah, I know who you're talking about too.
But I haven't seen her in a long time now. And
Yeah.
well, I know
Is
she
she the one that
watches
got
this.
it with not Mr. Saltwater? It was
Well, I know
No,
she.
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, well, she knows the show because we talked back and forth during her lives,
Oh,
and she
nice.
knew who I was because she says, "Were you on Seahorse Whisper?" And I told her, "Yeah," and and so she knew who you were and everything like that. But she was doing
Nice.
a lot of lives.
That's
And then she
cool.
just
Now
kinda
I want to
disappeared.
make sure I do know who you mean.
Yeah,
Now I'm curious.
yeah,
On TikTok?
on TikTok, yeah.
Huh. Well, I'll have to look it up. But
Oh, and yeah,
Oh,
Zen
I-
Ginger, we've been noticing the YouTube shorts because my husband watches a lot of YouTube channels, programming, mostly video game stuff and
Yep.
his own stuff. But there's a lot of shorts coming on all the time now on YouTube.
I know. Listen, you guys,
Well,
I
I
see
do
this stuff
YouTube
too,
too,
and
so.
I keep saying I need to do more of it. Man.
But you're
I'm just-
working hard all the time, Kelly. your
My
schedule
daughter
is
literally
insane.
said to me, "When's the next time you're going to have a day off?" I mean, it's
Mhm.
just my boss is on vacation, so it's just been a hectic time. But I get it. And anyone out there, I want to say, anyone out there doing their own videos or doing their own channels, I want to support you. This isn't just about us. This is about community. So if you find good videos, share them. And, or, if you find good channels, let's connect with them. I'm all about, just spreading the message and doing better, because when I can't, you guys need to, right? So that's why Holly was waiting for me all week to teach her how to start this if I can't come. And I didn't get with her either. So I'm gonna have to do that this week.
That's
to make sure.
understandable, though.
Still,
I figured you were hecka busy, so no big deal.
doesn't matter. Still gotta do it. But or start. Oh,
Kelly?
Zen Ginger said YouTube Shorts are trying to compete with TikToks now. Try those. The algorithm is pushing them out those days. I know, but I mean, like, what am I supposed to put in a TikTok? I'm old. I
Well,
don't want to put my face in it. And my Seahorse tank's not gorgeous, so I feel like it's wrong to use old stuff. What do you guys think about that, real quick?
no,
Because I
because
could make
Somebody.
hundreds of thousands of shorts and videos and TikToks and all that shit.
It's
Well,
new
not
to
TikToks.
somebody. I have to tell you, I have a friend that I shared your channel with him, and he's been watching it, your old videos and stuff. He doesn't keep seahorses, but he came to visit me
Mhm.
and was curious about mine. He had a lot of questions and was just curious about him. And I,
Sure.
here you can learn. So he's been enjoying your videos.
Well, that's great, but I can absolutely say they're terrible.
But they're,
and
like
I
I
need to
said,
redo
they're
them.
new. They're new to him, So you
Right.
did them, like you said, a long time ago. So they're going to be new to
Right.
a new audience.
Right. And I appreciate that. I know that the attention span of people today, and younger people especially, is very short. And we need
20
to do more
seconds.
shorts and quicker videos and etc. But it's just like, what do you do with them? I don't know. I need help with
I've
it.
never tried. I could post some funny ones, because I always get funny videos of my seahorses, in front of the saloon or coming out of a shark's mouth, or because I have all that crazy props.
Yes, you need to
Okay.
do us some shorts. Well,
They
and
do
Zen Ginger
funny
said
stuff.
you can use old footage,
Yeah, you
because
can
that's
use-
the thing. I've got hilarious videos and pictures and everything else
Mhm.
of seahorses making funny ass
They
faces,
do
right?
funny stuff.
And doing funny stuff. But then I'm like, that's 5-10 years ago. I don't want to, I don't know. But if it's okay, maybe I'll try to do better.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I
We'll
said,
see.
it's new to somebody. It's only not new to the people that watched it 10 years ago.
That's
You know?
true. That's
well,
true.
and
I
if
don't
you're
want to feel
old,
like a fake or anything, so I would say it if they asked. But I mean, today I seriously, I know I keep making excuses, guys, but I come home and I'm fucking exhausted, and I'm like, I look at the seahorses and feed them, and it's like, peace out. I don't even watch you, let alone video you, But what were you saying, Vincent?
no, I was going to say it's just some people like me. I could watch a 10-year video I watched 10 years ago, and I might not even remember it. It might.
That's
Yeah,
That's true.
right.
That's true. I recently watched the setup of Seahorse tank video, and I was just like, you can hear the skimmers in the background. It's terrible. It's
No, I
freaking
shared that
terrible.
with my friend. He liked that one.
Oh God. Well, good.
Right,
I'm glad he liked it.
10 facts about seahorses, because I think
Yeah.
that was like 14 minutes or something. I said, here, watch this one first, and you'll learn some interesting things. It's kind of cool.
Good. Well, I am glad that he liked any of the videos, and I will someday redo them, guys. But in the meantime, Zen, I appreciate you asking, because we want to promote other channels that are doing current stuff for absolute sure. So check out the co-hosts within the groups, friend them, check out their pages, and then let me know if you find any other good people spreading good information, because I'll definitely share. But guys, for tonight, I am gonna have to call it. It's I said at 9:00 we were ending it. Now it's 10. So and the wine is
Kelly?
gone. So we gotta go. What, Cheryl?
I need to talk with you just for about a minute after we log off.
Okay, absolutely. All right. I promise I will stay for a minute. All right. But for tonight, you guys, thank you for joining us. If we have a guest next week, I will let you know ahead of time. Otherwise, come and chat with us some more because we love having you. And for tonight, everybody say happy